Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome everybody to another episode of I can't remember who I am today, let alone it's Monday, Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, and we've got a great author for you today, and we're going to be talking about, one of the things that amazes me a lot, and we're talking with Lani, and could you pronounce your last name for me so I make sure I get it right?
Lanchester.
Lanchester.
So it has a ring to it. Lani Lanchester.
Yeah, it does. It really does. But the first thing I want to touch on is that you're an author and you've written a book about Palestine and the Middle East and a lot of different, South Africa and a lot of different places in our world that I really don't think, I could be wrong, I don't know. But from the conversations that I've had with people, there are a lot of people in the United States that are really not aware of things that have gone on in other countries or what's happening now. And I think it's really important and vital for all of us to get a grip of what's happening around the entire world, because at the end of the day, we're all, in my frame of reference, we're all one people. I did a video the other day, and you can go to Positive Talk Radio on YouTube to watch it. And it's about the experience that astronauts have when they go into space. And then they turn around and they look back at this small blue ball that is like suspended out in space.
Yes, I teach about this in my classroom. It's called the astronaut effect.
Oh,
yes.
You
because when you turn around and look at the Earth, you see that it's cold. It's this little spot of life in this vast universe, and it's cold and it's alone. And we're all one people. We all share one small home, and we need to take care of each other.
I am so glad that you're here, because I want to talk about this, because I have to tell you, well, first of all, we'll talk about it more in depth, because, and you're right. The astronauts, when they turn around, they go and they look, and they don't see any borders.
Yeah.
They don't see any divisions between peoples and states. They just see one thing, and then they look at the atmosphere, and the atmosphere looks very, very thin and very, very fragile. And we look up at the atmosphere and it looks like it goes on forever. It doesn't. So we need to be very careful about how we manage the atmosphere and our planet. And these guys, they come back from being in space, and a lot of them start a philanthropic endeavor to try and get people to recognize that my favorite phrase in the entire world is, we are all one.
Yes.
We're all one people. We're all human beings.
That's right. And I think it would be a wonderful thing to put all of our leaders up into space before they serve their term. I've always thought that one.
Did you catch what happened to William Shatner when he went up there?
No, I didn't.
William Shatner, of course, was Captain Kirk.
Yes.
In Star Trek. And he went up, the Tesla guy, I forget his name.
Elon Musk.
Yeah, Elon Musk, that's right. And he had a space, he invited people to go up into space. And William Shatner was one of the people he invited to go up. He came back and he was in tears, because the sheer scope of what it is up there, and what and then when you look around, because they're outside the atmosphere. They can see the stars, they can see the universe, and they realize that even though we're a small speck in the universe, it's all connected. And it's important for us to recognize and to realize that, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the themes of my book too, is that we are all connected, and if we and we need to understand that we're all one people, all one family, and we all have one provider. And we have to get the point of understanding forgiveness, and by listening to each other's stories. And so that's why it's called Learning to Listen to Palestine, because it starts with listening.
That is, I'm an old time sales guy,
Yeah.
and I always taught my newer salespeople being in sales is about listening. It's not about talking. It's not about selling something. It's about listening to a genuine need and fulfilling that need to the best of your ability.
Right. And it's also about every relationship we have is listening. And it's strange that we are such poor listeners, and we're becoming poorer listeners all the time. Listening takes practice, and it takes intentionality. We tend to want to interject our own belief system. And in fact, that's like this book, Learning to Listen to Palestine. It's called Learning to Listen to Palestine, a personal quest, because this is my personal quest. I this didn't come naturally to me either. I had to learn to listen to Palestine, because this word right here, Palestine, it was something I had a hard time getting past.
Sure.
I had a friend who was we worked at the same university. He was a professor at the university, and we were great friends, and I respected him in every way. But he wrote a book with Palestine across the front of it. And even though I respected him in every way, I never read his book. And I was a voracious reader over everything. And because he wrote this book about Palestine, I didn't quite trust him. And why would that be? I'm a Christian, and I've been taught, raised to love my neighbor, even to love my enemy. And blessed are the peacemakers. But yet, here's this word that is something that I trip on. And it was because somehow something went wrong. I was conditioned to not listen to Palestine, to turn away when I saw the name. So it took me a while to realize that I had this problem. And I ended up with this Palestinian friend. And we met online, and he loved to tell me stories about Israel and Palestine. And I love to hear these stories. He was from Nazareth. Can you imagine growing up in the place where Jesus grew up? And so I had lots of questions, and he loved to hear my stories about science, just like we were talking about right now. I love to tell my science stories. And stories are what unite us.
Yes, they are.
But at one point, I got, it actually happened that I was going to go to Hawaii to sit on a beach and cry. And yeah, I had a broken heart. I had some problems in my family, and Christmas was coming up, and I didn't want to be around family with everybody telling me what to do and how to fix everything. So I just told my Palestinian friend that I was going to go sit on the beach in Hawaii and cry. And he said, "Why would you do that? Why would you go to Hawaii to be miserable?" He said, "You come to Israel and walk in the steps of Jesus. And if you need a beach to cry on, we've got one." And I went, "Oh, all right." So that's what I did. And so that's how I got started on this trip of where I got to start to listen to Palestinians.
Did he know that he grew up in Nazareth?
Yes, yes. My
I mean,
friend
that's where Jesus grew up too?
yes, he's a Christian. And in fact, my friend, he is a Palestinian that can trace their roots back to being Christian from the time of Christ. Their family knows that they were converted by one of the apostles, and they know which one.
Which one was it?
John.
The Apostle John. Now,
Yeah.
for those of you that don't know, the Apostle John was the one who was faithful to Jesus at the end, while he was being crucified. He was taking care of his mother and Mary Magdalene, and he was the of the 12, including Saint. I'll never deny you, Saint Peter. They all did except for John, and he
Yeah.
is credited with writing um, the Revelations, which I don't know how true that is. And he's also got um, a gospel. So, but that's incredible. They can they can take their heritage all the way back to 2,000 years, for heaven's sakes.
Right. Exactly. And there's a lot of stories like this in Palestine. There were many Christian villages around Palestine before 1948, and many of these were destroyed. But I'm getting ahead of my story because I didn't know this. I didn't know about Palestinian Christians. Um, I thought if you were a Christian in Israel, you were probably a Messianic Jew. But so this surprised me when I met him. And so I asked him how long his family had been Christian, and he told me this. And I went, oh, this is just amazing. So I really enjoyed getting to learn a lot from him. And when I got the chance to go to Israel, and it was because I was so sad, but suddenly I had all of this excitement and joy of something I'd always wanted to do in front of me. But my dad didn't want me to go because I wasn't going to go with a tour group. I wasn't going to go with all the security. And he had read about all of these problems between the Palestinians and the Israelis and the Jews. And so he didn't think I would be safe. And I said, I'm not American. What could happen?
Oh, there are people that have said that in which they didn't say that.
Well,
And
exactly. So what I did is I did a Google search just to see if there was, anything that popped up that I should be concerned about that might, or if I could just reassure my dad, see, I'm going to be okay. Um, and what I searched was Israel, Palestine conflict, and Americans. And I got a hit. And it was recent, and she was my age. The summer before I went to Israel, there was a woman named Shireen Abu Akla. She was a Palestinian Christian from Jerusalem who moved to the States, went to school here, and and worked here and earned her citizenship here. But at some point, she felt called to go back to Israel and Palestine and to report on what was going on in this Israel-Palestine conflict because the West wasn't hearing about what was going on. So she went back and she worked for Al Jazeera as a reporter for many, many years. And so when I read about her, what had happened was she was in Jenin. Jenin is a small village actually a larger village in Palestine. And the IDF were there for some reason in a big armored vehicle. And so some reporters were there, a group of reporters, and Shireen was one of them, to just report on why the IDF was there, what kind of action was about to happen, was somebody going to get arrested, whatever. So she did just as she was supposed to. She put on her press vest that's blue and white and her press helmet, and she and a partner were walking slowly down the street with their hands visible, so just as they were trained to do. And an IDF sniper, targeted her and shot her in the head. And this shocked me. It didn't make any sense to me because I hadn't heard about it.
right.
And they tried to deny it for a little bit, but it was 8 tight shots in a tight formation. And so it was definitely a sniper, and it was an Israeli bullet. So it wasn't, it couldn't be denied. So I looked, and for some reason I hadn't heard anything about this, but I'd been hearing a lot in the news about a basketball star who went to Russia, and she had taken some illegal cannabis into Russia, and the State Department was doing everything they could to help her and to get her out. And I heard about this in every newsreel, so the press was covering this like crazy. Well, I didn't understand. This lady was press. This was one of their own. Why weren't they covering this story? And she was an American. Why wasn't the State Department trying to get justice for her? And it even confused me about the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. The Israeli Defense Force, I had always seen as a force that was meant to provide protection for this group of people who needed a safe haven of Israel. But here they targeted and murdered a woman, and the authorities within the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, did nothing to bring this person to justice.
No.
So nothing I knew made any sense at this point. What I thought I knew about Israel didn't make sense.
Well, and that is a large piece of the problem, is that within the news, and there's so much political stuff that goes within that, within Palestinians and Israelis and all of those things. Well, as an example, like you probably, do you know who Dennis Rodman is? Well, yes.
Yes.
He still is. He's not was.
Right.
Dennis Rodman, he went to North Korea and spent some time with whoever was in charge there then. He spent some time with them, and that was covered. So it is interesting that and by the way, I want to get out the name of your book often, which is Learning to Listen to Palestine, A Personal Quest. And now I was looking, do you have a website that goes with it yet?
I do. It's listentopalestine.com.
Perfect.
And I've started a podcast too.
Oh, good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
What'd you call your podcast?
It's called Learning to Listen to Palestine. And
that's unique.
Right. But what I'm doing is I'm bringing Palestinians on as often as possible to tell their stories. I'll tell you more about that. It's because they've been dehumanized and we don't hear their stories.
Well, and the one thing that we are going to do is, my people talk to your people, and we came to an agreement that we're starting a new podcast radio show. It's actually old and new. It's called My Independence Report. And you and I are going to go in depth into the Palestinian issue and into the Israeli issue when we do that podcast. But I'm getting a report from somebody that says I'm tuning in to listen to positive talk. So yeah, I want to make sure that we honor that as well.
Yes.
And I really did like the fact that when you were talking about, when we were talking about the astronaut effect and what that does for folks. I would love for your opinion, and if you have some positive ideas on how we can all learn to live together in peace and harmony.
Well, the reason why I told the story was because I almost didn't go to Israel because I was I had a hit, but what I was told, I asked God if I should even go, and He told me that I should, and I said, well, why? And it was to listen. And what was amazing is when I went through Israel, and I had this directive to listen to people. And when I would stop and meet people, I would look people in the eyes, or they would look me in the eyes and say, why are you here traveling by yourself? And I said, I'm here to listen. And they'd lock eyes with me and go, oh, and they'd pull up a chair for me and they'd bring me tea or coffee. And they'd start telling me all these stories about their family. They'd tell me about their culture, their food. They'd tell me about news of the day. And I had this experience of meeting people one-on-one, and it was humanizing. where before I couldn't look at this word Palestine. There was something wrong with me. It broke through all of that. And I started seeing Palestinians as people. And once I started seeing Palestinians as people, it seems simple, but yes, we can stand back looking at the earth from far away and knowing that we're all one people. But then you need to meet the people. And as I did this, my heart connected with them. And this happened over and over and over again as I went through Israel.
I'm a firm believer that regardless of your situation, regardless of what you think you know, that when you run into a situation that is different than you think you know, I'll give you an example. You know who Liz Cheney is?
Yes.
She has a sister. And of course, Dick Cheney was vice president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a staunch anti-gay person
Mm-hmm.
until his this is what they call karma in my world, until his daughter came out as being gay.
Uh-huh.
He had no choice. He had to change his position because he knew someone. It wasn't a boogeyman in the cupboard anymore. He was an actual real person that he happened to love, who happened to be gay. And so he really had to change. And my opinion is that if we all could have a conversation with somebody and listen to their point of view and be honestly willing to share back and forth, we'd get a whole lot farther towards peace in our world than we are today. Do you think that's true?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that happened on the trip too was there was one point I was in Jerusalem and I went up on this up to the Mountain of Olives. And as you go up to the Mount of Olives, it's quite a climb. And when I got up there, I went to a church called Paternoster. This is the place where Jesus taught his disciples how to pray. Yeah. And it's really cool because I sat up there. I was tired and it was hot. It was December, but it was hot. It was weird. And so I wrote out the Lord's Prayer in my journal because all around this church, there's 172 plaques of the Lord's Prayer in different languages.
Oh, cool. I didn't know there were
Right?
172 languages.
Well, there's a lot more than that, but that's what they had
That's good.
translated at the church. But I was sitting there looking at this prayer and realizing this is the antithesis of the Tower of Babel.
Exactly. Now I want you to hold that thought for a second because we need to take a quick break. Because again, one of the things that we like to do here is I try and educate people who may not know what if somebody says like they're saying in their car or at home in their headset, what in the heck is a Tower of Babel? So we will be right back so that you can explain what that is and the effect that it had on humanity. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Positive Talk Radio. We're going to take a short break to tell you audio and music creators about our commercial affiliate, Lyric Vids, specializing in creating amazing and engaging lyric videos. Are you looking to promote your videos in the most engaging way, but you don't have an animator and an editor? Whether you're an artist, musician, or business with a message to share, our lyric videos are designed to hook viewers and amplify your reach. Go to positivetalkradio.net/lyric vids. That's positivetalkradio.net/LYRICVIDS now to get started. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. We hope you enjoyed learning about our affiliate Lyric Vids, who specialize in creating captivating animated lyric videos. Now let's get back to the show.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Lani Lanchester is with us today. She is an author. She is a teacher. She is a very nice human being, which it would be nice if there were more of them. But that's okay. we'll get there. And she's written the book, Learning to Listen to Palestine, A Personal Quest. You know, it's interesting. If we learn to listen, we can listen to anybody. And if we are empathetic towards people's plights and understand it, then we can work towards resolution of the issues, don't you think?
Oh, yes. I think that it's always about relationship. And you can't have relationship without listening to somebody. And you can't have love without listening to somebody. And you can't have peace without love. So that it all starts with listening to each other. And it's a skill.
It really is. And have you ever heard of the expression, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth? And there's
Mhm.
a reason for that, because
Mhm.
we need you to listen more so than we need you to speak.
That's right.
It's an important, but most people don't get that. Now, when you're by the way, what grade do you teach again?
I teach high school science.
Oh my goodness
So I
gracious!
teach all kinds of things.
You would,
I
yes.
teach chemistry, biology, physics, engineering, environmental science, health. It goes on.
You would have to. You would have to. Now, in this day and age, I have to ask, because of cell phones and smartphones and stuff, and
Mhm.
you're doing a health class, and the kids start talking about sex and stuff. Do you have to take notes?
Do we have to take notes?
Yeah, because they know more than you do.
Oh, no. Well, actually, no. I teach them. They learn a lot from me because I don't teach about sex. I teach about reproduction, and that's different.
It is. It is.
And
But
someday I'll tell you. We'll have a show about that because I'm writing another book about that one.
about the art of reproduction.
No, about teaching biology from a respect for life position.
Exactly.
And it's a respect for all life, even frogs, you know.
So you don't dissect frogs in your classroom?
Yes, we do, but we do it respectfully. There is a difference.
Well, we're gonna have to have that discussion, I will say, because I never had to dissect a frog in high school. Of course, I didn't do very well in science, so that's probably why.
Mm.
So in any event, she's written the book "Learning to Listen to Palestine," and I was thinking during the break that yes, it is Palestine, but it really is a concept that can work with any conflict that we're having around the world today.
That's right. And the way I learned about it was I wouldn't have written the book if there wasn't hope, because the conflict between Israel and Palestine is really difficult right now. At some of its darkest days. But but I read this book by Desmond Tutu, The Book of Forgiving, and this is what made me write my book, was because I found hope. And Desmond Tutu, I didn't know that there was peace in South Africa. I grew up in the 80s when the apartheid was like the worst thing I'd ever heard. And the conflicts that were going on there, and the killing of each other and the brutalization of each other and the treatment of each other was just the worst thing. And and I knew the apartheid ended, but I didn't know that there was healing afterwards. And that's the important thing of the Book of Forgiving, is Desmond Tutu systematically set up these opportunities for people to tell their stories about the trauma that they went through. And he helped lead people into healing and to forgiving each other, because otherwise they would have continued to live out the trauma that they had from those years, and it would have continued to make more trauma and more trauma and more trauma. Instead, they had the systematic, structured forgiving that he led them through, and it's a beautiful thing. And it really shows that world peace is actually possible. And at one point, I always thought this world peace thing was this almost Barbie doll, Miss America pageant platitude. and I wish for world peace. I read this book and I went, hey, it's possible. It's happened. If it can happen there, it can happen between all of us. And this book really is about having forgiveness between all of our relationships.
Which, by the way, is an important aspect of humanity.
Yes.
Because if you listen and listen to people who are on their deathbed, when all of the trivial things that we talk about and what we get angry about and what we're not forgiving about in life, all those things go away. And now all you want to do is be kind, loving, forgiving, and you regret the fact that you didn't live your life that way. In many cases. By the way, we're talking with Lani Lanchester. Her book, Learning to Listen to Palestine: A Personal Quest, is out now. When did it come out, by the way?
About a month ago, and it's on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble. On Amazon right now, you can get the ebook free with the Kindle book for free.
Ooh, free's a good price. I've heard that.
I know. Isn't that fantastic? So I hope people will take advantage of that and, buy two, because this is a book for sharing. We're not going to have world peace by CNN getting the message out there. It's going to be you and I getting the message out there.
It's one person at a time.
Yes.
We're going to talk more about this when we come back. We need to take a station break. And again, we're talking with Lani Lanchester. Go to our website, which is
Listen to Palestine.com.
And we'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Lani Lanchester is our guest today. And I love that commercial. I play it at the bottom of every hour because it just it boggles the mind that we have 4 million kids in the United States of America. We're not talking about Africa, and we're not talking about Asia. We're talking about here at home in the United States of America. 4 million kids that are either homeless or they're in foster care and they are hungry. And they say charity begins at home. Maybe that's where we should start. What do you think? Should we maybe take care of people that are here, all of our people, whether they're not their what color they are or who they love? It always amazed me why anybody would care about who somebody else loved. But that's just me. Anyway, Lani, what do you think? Should charity start at home?
Oh, absolutely. We need to be look at the people around us and connect with them. There's a story in my book where there was a homeless man that came into a grocery store ahead of me, and he was buying a blanket, and the night before had been really cold, and this night was going to be colder, and he was having trouble getting his change out and counting his money on the counter, and it was really dirty. His nails were long and dirty, and I heard God tell me to buy the blanket. And so I was kind of shy, and I was slowly getting my wallet out of my purse, to try to interject into this. And I could see that the clerks, they were just frustrated with him. But then another clerk tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Follow me." And I did. And I followed her instead. And then I went and checked out my things, and I thought, I'm going to go give him some money or to see if he needs anything else. But he was gone.
Mhm.
I missed the opportunity. I followed man instead of what God told me to do at that moment. And so that's something that eats at my soul all the time, that the only reason I even saw that man as human at that point was because God was tapping me on the shoulder and telling me that that was somebody that he loved and that I needed to take care of.
Remember the book that Desmond Tutu did?
Yes.
What's the name of the cover again? What's the name of the book?
The Book of Forgiving.
Forgive yourself for that, would you?
Yes, but I still find it's an important lesson that I keep in my soul, that
It's
I don't want to miss those opportunities.
I've got to tell you, and people that listen to the show a lot are going to go, "Oh God, here he goes again." But I drove a bus for 12 years in Seattle. I went from talking to vice presidents and playing golf and expensive dinners to talking to people who couldn't afford $2 for bus fare.
Mm.
It was an important part of my life. It was an important part of my experience because I I've always had the idea that we are all one and that we are all one people and we're all human. But then in that environment, I learned that that is absolutely true, and that you cannot hold it against somebody for the circumstances that they find themselves in, because that's not your place. Because I think even in the Bible they'd call that judgmental, wouldn't they?
Mhm. That would make sense to me. Yeah.
So my effort is to be kind to folks, and you did the right thing. He just happened to be gone at the moment, but there will come another time when that
I,
will happen again.
I think it was an important thing for me to learn too, is to humanize him, that he
Yes.
was human. And where I could see to the clerks that were there in front of me, he was really just a problem. He wasn't a human. And they were just trying to get him back outside as quickly as possible. Where I don't know what I would have done, but but at least I would have treated him like a human. I may have known his name. I may have been able to give him some comfort and some connection to another human being. And we need to do that to each other as often as possible.
A real quick story.
Mm.
Do you know who Neil Donald Walsh is?
No.
He's an author. He's written like 30 books. One of them was on the bestseller list for 2.5 years. It was called Conversations with God.
Mm.
One of the things that he says in his writings is that for a period of time he was homeless.
Uh-huh.
He'd broken his neck in a car accident, lost his job. His wife left. It's like a bad country music song. His wife left him, and so he was now homeless. And he said the worst part about being homeless, and people don't consider this. The worst part about being homeless is, where do you go to the bathroom? Where can you go in a sanitary place to do that? A necessary function that we all have. And because he would get thrown out of restaurants or places. You can't use that here. Get out of here. You stink. And he did, because he hadn't had a bath in like 5 weeks. But finally, one guy said, "All right." He was the manager of McDonald's, and he said, "All right, I'll let you use the restroom here, but you can't panhandle. You just have to get in and get out." And he's that stuck in his memory as being one of the kindest things anybody'd ever done for him. And it was such a small thing, but it was an important thing in his life. And we can all do that all the time, I think.
Sure. Yes. If we just look for opportunities just to know somebody's name, and then you find those little things that you can do. And I think one of the most difficult things in homelessness is the disconnection from other people. You lose a connection with other people. And so the first thing we need to do to get people off the street is to reconnect with them. It's broken relationships. It's usually causes homelessness.
And then that leads to drug addiction and a lot of those sorts of things that are kind of inherent with what that is. But we can help people, and we are the most wealthy, most powerful nation in the world, and we can do it if we made the decision to do it. We could. We're early in the program, we were talking about the astronaut effect.
Yes.
I wrote that, or I did that video, and somebody posted on as a comment to that video. They said no, because the point of the video was that we're all one and we're all come from the same place. And he said no, there are people that are enemies. We've got enemies in our world, and 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 so I wrote him back a long dissertation about why I created the video, what I meant by the video, and thank you for watching, by the way. You know what he wrote back to me?
Huh.
He said, "Don't thank me for watching it. I only watched 30 seconds until I figured out what gibble you were trying to produce. And oh, by the way, I don't want to talk to anything to you because you're just you must be an old hippie." I got the biggest kick out of that. I was 10 when hippies were a thing.
Right.
But make love, not war. John Lennon said, give peace a chance, and all you need is love and stuff. There are some great people that have been around our world that are trying to make that difference. And
I think that we have lost sight of that love really is the most powerful thing that we can do.
yes,
Love is difficult, but it really is the most powerful thing we can do.
why do you think it's so difficult?
Well, we have a lot of greed. We have a lot of self-focus. And I think as we self-focus, we don't even love ourselves. And we're taught by Jesus to love our neighbor as ourself. And so we have to start by really understanding our value. We are extremely valuable and loved by God. We started to talk about the Tower of Babel and how
That's right. Yeah,
we all got fractured. And so the Tower of Babel is when we decided that we were going to make a name for ourselves. And so they built this tower, and then God confused the language, and then we were all divided and spread throughout the world with different languages. But at Paternoster, this church on the mountain in the Mount of Olives.
Mount of Olives, yeah.
Yes. Here's this prayer, and it says, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." So suddenly we're all united instead of divided. But instead of being united, trying to make us the most important, God is the most important. We have one Father. But that makes us important. Hallowed be thy name. And so we raise up his name with this prayer. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Well, this is cool because Jesus is telling us to pray now for the kingdom of heaven here on earth as it is in heaven. Well, in heaven, we're not going to be divided by races, and we're not going to be divided by greed and all of these other things that divide us. So we're supposed to, what he's saying is that this is possible now. He's not lying to us in telling us to pray this way. It's not a big tease. It's real.
Well,
so
he's one that wouldn't lie. I mean, unlike some of our leaders that might, fib a little bit, but
right. So peace is possible. And there's a lot of these things out there that we think that peace won't be possible. There's a lot of religious beliefs that peace isn't possible until the return of Jesus. Well, that's not what Jesus is teaching here. He's telling us to pray for this now. So if he's telling us to pray for us now, that means it's possible now. And so, but the next thing is, well, there's two things. Give us this day our daily bread. So we have one provider, and that's the Lord. And so we don't really need to squabble over all of our stuff, worried that we're not going to have enough to share with somebody else. And then it's forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who've sinned against us. Well, this is essential in all of our relationships, as we've said before, with like the Book of Forgiving. This is the heart of every peace plan, should be listening to each other's stories and forgiving. And finally, at the end, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Here's the clincher. We do have an enemy, and it's not each other. It's Satan. We have one enemy. So if that is true, then we need to start listening to each other and start loving each other and valuing each other as we value ourselves. We have to see how valuable we are. And this is one of the things I teach in my classroom. I teach from day one, look around you. And if you look around you, you're going to see people who have thoughts that have that nobody has ever had before or ever will have again. And you have thoughts that nobody has ever had and will ever have again. And that is valuable. And you want to get to know the students around you. You need to know their names, and you need to have these conversations and find out what they know and believe. And you're going to find such rich things there. And so I start in my classroom from day one, building this trust between my students and each other. And this is something that we can do in life as well, and we should be. But it's face to face. It's one relationship at a time. But there's always a few students that I have trouble with, that I can't gain their trust easily. And usually this is because something's happened to their life. Some sort of trauma has happened in their life before.
See, what I was going to tell you is it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with what has happened to them before.
Exactly.
And it is a process that they need to go through. But what they need to find are people like you who care for them unconditionally, so that regardless of what happened to them, they can find the other side of somebody that cares for them unconditionally, rather than everybody hates me, I can't do anything, I'm either fat, short, or I'm not smart, or whatever it is, because those are stories that we're just telling ourselves. And
yeah,
so
and a lot of times, I can get through to these students, but sometimes there's a student I can't get through to. And so this is what I do. Eventually that student, we'll lock up, and not be able to get anything done for them, for me, or even my classroom sometimes. And it can get to the point where I'm mad. And so this is what I do, is I tell the student in the hall, and they don't want to go in the hall, because these students, things happen in the hallway where a teacher can go out there and they can just chew them out and tear them down and dehumanize them. But I don't do that. I tell them go in the hall, and then I go out there with them and I tell them lean against the wall, and I lean against the wall too. And we're out there because I'm angry and things are not working in the classroom. And they are anxious now because they're in the hall and they don't want to be out there. And they'll turn to me and say, what do I do? What are you going to do? And they just want to have it. Just throw it at me. Do it. Let's get it out of the way. And I say, we are leaning against the wall until I calm down. And they go, oh. And then that's what we do. We just lean, and I breathe. And once I feel myself again, I turn to them and I say, I love you. And that's the most important job I have in this classroom, is to love you. And I shouldn't be here if I didn't love you. But we're not working well together. And we need to get on the same side. And so then I will talk to my students about this, and this shocks them and surprises them. And so I'll tell them what happened, what's going on, and then I have to be willing to listen to their stories. I even have to be willing to be wrong. So if I did something that triggered them, I need to know what triggered them. And so I have to be vulnerable, and I have to be willing to listen. And a lot of times they'll tell me stories about somebody who may have looked like me, who hurt them in the past, and they weren't going to trust me until we had this conversation. And I tell them, my job is to give you the best outcome possible. But to do that, we're going to work together. And after this conversation, and after I've listened to their story, we can do anything together. That's a peace plan.
Yes,
And it's a peace plan where I win, they win. We're on the same side. And this is what I do. And this is what I think is the story that should be happening with any conflict, is we need to listen to each other first. We have to love ourselves, and we have to love them. And we have to listen, and we have to grow in that. And it's a lot of work.
Well, and some people would say that's just not possible. I don't believe that, but there are some people that would say that's just not possible. If you decide, if you make a decision, when I was driving a bus, and there were people that I would have a conversation with that talked to nobody else all day long. Nobody else smiled at them at all. Nobody looked at them because they were dirty, or they were homeless, or they were high and dirty and homeless. So sometimes it comes in pairs and triples and stuff, but they appreciated some of them, not all
Yeah.
of them. Some people you can't reach, but you know what? It's not your place to reach them if they determine for themselves they're not reachable. Because do you know what's going to happen? I let me tell you, I'll make you $100 bet right here. You ready?
Okay.
That that if it has not already happened, and it will, you're going to have a student come up to you who's no longer your student, that's graduated out from your class, and you're going to say, Miss Lanchester, I just want you to know you had a major impact in my life. Has it happened yet?
Yeah. Yeah.
See, I told you, you owe me $100. I do know. because that's the thing, is that you are, and that's why I love teachers so much, because they're affecting our children, and it's our children that are going to be the beneficiaries of all the stuff that we're doing to them with the environment and everything else. And I just don't think that a teacher like you don't get paid enough money. And I realize it's not about the money, but you should be able to live a comfortable lifestyle and make a little bit more money. And that quarterback who makes $250 million in 7 years can make a little bit less. Not that you take it from him, but you know what I mean? I think we have our priorities screwed up in so many different ways.
I think the wonderful thing about teaching is, we think of it about the content, the science, the writing, but it really is about relationship. And when it's about relationship, you get these amazing outcomes for the students. And it's not about test scores. I always tell my students, if somebody tells you that science is about coming up with the right answer, they're lying to you, because science is about asking questions, and it's about that interaction, that the exploration for truth. And you have to have relationships with each other to do these things.
There is nothing in the world that can be done well without building relationship first.
Yes.
That is sales, that is belief structures, that is taking care of you. Without developing relationships, you're never going to accomplish anything. And in my opinion, that, and because you're dealing with other people and they've got their own feelings about relationships and stuff too. By the way, Lani, we're going to run out of time, and I want to make sure we get the word out again. Learning to Listen to Palestine, a personal quest.
There's the book.
It's right there, and you can pick it up at I'm looking at Amazon right now. Although go to our website, which again is
It's listentopalestine.com, and you'll also have links there to the podcast Learning to Listen to Palestine. And if you are Palestinian, I would love for you to tell your story on this podcast. I want people to hear about your culture, about your families, about the things that you hope for, and as well as things that you've gone through. It really is, we need to connect and build relationships and see how easy this is to do if we just reach out to each other.
And I'm willing to bet a lot of those stories will be heartbreaking, but they need to be told.
That's right.
They need to be told. And again, we've been talking with Lani Lanchester, and thank you, my dear, for being here. We got to go, but is there anything else you'd like to add before we leave?
I'd love it if you would look at the book. We already said that. I list a lot of other resources to look at. If Palestine is a word that triggers you, this book is for you, because it's learning to listen. If you are somebody who the word is troublesome to you, I encourage you to read the book and read about the stories that I've told and the research that I did about the stories that I heard. I think it will really help you to reach into your community deeper and to connect with Palestinian people.
Exactly. And we all deserve to be heard, and we all deserve to be cared for and treated with respect. Yes. So again, we've been talking with Lani Lanchester, and I want to thank you again for being here. And we're gonna do a My Independent show with you as well. So
fantastic.
That won't be today, but we're gonna do that again. So Thank you again for being here.
Bye, Kevin.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at